Days after the Paris attacks, senators came together for a top-secret briefing on the terrorist threat. Marco Rubio was missing, fundraising in California instead. 2 weeks later, terrorists struck again in San Bernardino. And where was Marco? Fundraising again in New Orleans. Over the last 3 years, Rubio has missed important national security hearings and missed more total votes than any other senator. Politics first. That's the Rubio way.
Jeb with a jab. Governor Bush, in his with his leadership pack, Right to Rise, with an attack ad of his one-time protege, Senator Marco Rubio. Both want the Republican nomination, and politics ain't beanbag. Let's talk about it now with our political panel. Skyping in from Washington, D.C., we welcome David Goodfriend of Goodfriend Government Services. David served as Deputy Staff Secretary to Bill Clinton during his presidency. And Skyping in from New York City, you bet, there's the columnist for the Fiscal Times, Liz Peek. Liz, since we share the same side of the aisle, I'll ask you first. This attack, does Jeb really have to find something to knock Rubio out in terms of the battle for establishment votes in the Republican primaries?
Well, I think he's trying to. I don't think this is going to resonate very much. But look, he's in a somewhat desperate position. Obviously considered the obvious front runner for a very long time. Jeb Bush has really failed to move the needle in any of the states where he's battling Marco Rubio for the centrist, moderate Republican vote. Obviously, there are other people in that race, too, people like Chris Christie, who really people had written off earlier on. But there's a lot of duking it out for that moderate Republican position. And I think it's sort of too bad that Jeb Bush, who came into this race really telling everybody he would only run on issues and he wanted to run joyfully, I think was his word, that he's sort of resorting to this. I don't think it really speaks well for where he is on his campaign.
Well, on the Democratic side, it was the late Hubert Humphrey who earned the moniker the Happy Warrior. So let me turn to our resident Democrat, David Goodfriend. Look, this is part and parcel of politics. Can it work for Jeb? Because those charges dealing with the attacks and talking about fundraising, Liz says they won't resonate, but I think with some national security concerns there, it might work for Jeb. What do you say, David?
Well, I think accusing somebody of fundraising in a presidential campaign is like handing out speeding tickets at the Indy 500. I don't know exactly, what that's going to do. But the thing that I found a little confusing about this is Jeb Bush used this exact line of attack during a debate that I thought Marco Rubio parried quite well. He said something to the effect of, your advisors told you to say that, but you didn't really mean it. And I thought that Rubio came out of that debate looking better than Bush did. So we see Bush going back to what I thought was a relatively unsuccessful line of attack in a debate. There has to be some polling data internally that would suggest to the Bush campaign that this is a good idea. They're not stupid people, and they certainly can afford to run polls.
And of course, when you buy ad times and you repeat this thing, it creates an impression. Let me go back to that delightful comment you made about fundraising in a presidential campaign, David. Let me talk about after fundraising and after public life. Senator Harry Reid retiring, but now we hear that he's asking the Federal Election Commission to create an exemption for him to get access to $600,000 in unspent campaign and PAC funds for his transition to public life. David, you may be a good Democrat. 20 seconds to both of you. David, you can't agree with this, can you?
Well, I'll take it one step further. I think no elected official should be allowed to take campaign funds with them when they retire. None. And on a personal level, I will tell you, I hosted a fundraiser for a Democratic senator, raised a lot of money for him. And the very next week, he announced he was retiring. And I called him up and I said, I want you to take every dime that I just raised for you and give it to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. And I'm not kidding. And I was not exactly a popular Democrat to that guy.
Well, you would have been popular if you'd said give it to the Republican Senatorial Committee. That's a whole other thing. Liz Peek, last word to you, 20 seconds.
I totally agree. The FEC has made it very clear that the one thing you cannot do with leftover campaign money is spend it for personal means or for purposes. Harry Reid's got a little problem here. He's already been caught out spending campaign money on his granddaughters and various presents and stuff. He can't be allowed to do this.
And we thank you both. We'll be back.